Chapter 4. The World Turned White. Garbed in fur, Coram set forth. He wore a white fur robe over his own clothes, and there was a huge hood on the robe to cover his helmet, all made from the soft pelt of the winter marten. Even the horse they had given him had a coat of fur-trimmed doeskin embroidered with scenes of a valiant past. They gave him fur-lined boots and gauntlets of doeskin also embroidered, and a high saddle, and saddle panniers, and soft cases for his bow, his lances, and the blade of his war-axe. He wore one of the gauntlets on his silver hand so that no casual eye would know him. And he kissed Maeve, and he saluted the folk of Caer Marlod as they stood regarding him with grave and hopeful eyes upon the walls of the fortress town, and was kissed upon his forehead by King Monarch. "Bring us back our spear, Briarnac," said King Monarch, "so that we may tame the bull, the black bull of Crinanas, so that we may defeat our enemies and make our land green again." "I will seek it," promised Prince Coram Jaelin Ursay, and his single eye shone brightly, with tears or with confidence none could tell, and he mounted his great horse, the huge and heavy war-horse of the Tuatha na Crim Cruach, and he placed his feet in the stirrups that he had them make for him, for they had forgotten the use of stirrups, and he put his tall lance in the stirrup rest, though he did not unfurl his banner, stitched for him all the previous night by the maidens of Caer Marlod. "You look like a great war knight, my lord," murmured Maeve, and he reached down to stroke her red gold hair, and touched her soft cheek. He said, "I will return, Maeve." He had ridden southeast for 2 days, and the riding had not been difficult, for he had ridden this way more than once, and time had not destroyed many of the landmarks that had once been familiar to him. Perhaps because he had found so little and yet so much at Castle Arawn, he now headed for Moidal's Mount, where Ralena's castle had once stood. It was easy to justify this goal in terms of his quest, for Moidal's Mounts had once been the last outpost of Luaminesh, and now the last of Luaminesh was High Brazail. He would lose neither time nor direction by seeking out Moidal's Mount, if that had not too sunk when Luaminesh sank. South and east he rode, and the world grew colder, and showers of bright bouncing hailstones capered on the hard earth, pattered on his armoured shoulders and horse's neck and withers. Many times his road across the great wild moor was obscured by sheets of this frozen rain, and sometimes it grew so bad that he was forced to take shelter where he could, sometimes behind a boulder, for there were few trees on the moor, save some gorse and stunted birch, and all the bracken and heather which should have been flourishing at this season was either completely dead or feebly alive. Once deer and pheasant had been everywhere, but now Coram saw no pheasant, and had only seen one wary stag, thin, mad-eyed, on the whole of his journey. And the further east he rode, the worse the prospect of the land became. Soon there was heavy frost sparkling on every piece of vegetation, and coverings of snow on every hilltop, on every boulder. The land rose higher, and the air grew thinner and colder, and Coram was glad of the heavy robe his friends had given him, for slowly the frost gave way to snow, and every way he looked the world was white, and its whiteness reminded him of the colour of the hounds of Ceranos. For now his horse waded through snow up to its hocks, and Coram knew that if attacked he would have difficulty in fleeing any danger, and almost as much in manoeuvring to face it. But at least the skies remained blue and sharp and clear, and the sun, though giving little heat, was bright. It was the mist which made Coram wary, for he knew that with the mist might come the devil hounds and their masters. And now he began to discover the shallow valleys of the moors, and in the valleys the hamlets, the villages and the towns where once Mabden folk had lived. And every settlement was deserted. Coram took to using these deserted places for his night camps. Hesitant to build a fire lest the smoke be seen by enemies or potential enemies, he found that he could burn peat on the flagstones of empty cottages in a manner which would let the smoke disperse before it could be detected from even a close distance. Thus he was able to keep both his horse and himself warm and cook hot food. Without these comforts, his ride would have been miserable indeed. What saddened him was that the cottages still contained the furniture, ornaments, and little trinkets of the folk who had lived in them. There had been no looting, for, Coram imagined, the Foy Muir had no interest in Mabden artefacts. But in some of the villages, the most easterly, there were signs that the hounds of Cernunnos had come a-hunting and found no shortage of prey. Doubtless that was why so many had fled and sought safety in the old disused hill forts like Caer Marlod. Coram could tell that there was a complex and reasonably sophisticated culture that had flourished here. A rich agricultural people who had had time to develop their artistic gifts. In the abandoned settlements he found books as well as paintings, musical instruments as well as elegant metalwork and pottery. It saddened him to see it all. Had his battle against the sword rulers been pointless then? Luamunesh, which he had fought for, as much as he had fought for his own folk, was gone, and what followed it was now destroyed. After a while he began to avoid the villages and seek out caves where he would not be reminded of the Mabden tragedy. But then, one morning after he had been riding for little more than an hour, he came to a broad depression in the moor, in the centre of which was a frozen tarn. To the northeast of the tarn he saw what he at first took to be standing stones, all about the height of a man, but there were several hundred, whereas most stone circles were usually made up of hardly more than a score of granite slabs. As with everywhere else on the moor, snow was thick, and snow covered the stones. Coram's path took him the other side of the tarn, and he was about to avoid the monuments, for such he judged them, when he thought he caught a movement of something black amongst the universal whiteness. A crow? He shaded his eyes to peer among the stones. No, something larger. A wolf, possibly. If it were a deer, he had need of meat. He drew the cover off his bow and strung it, swinging his lance behind him to give him a clear shot as he fitted an arrow to the string, and then with his heels he urged his horse forward. As he drew closer, he began to realize that these standing stones were not typical. The carving on them was much more detailed, so much that they resembled the finest Vadhag statuary. And that was what they were. Statues of men and women poised as if in battle. Who had made them? For what purpose? Again Coram saw the movement of a dark shape. Then it was hidden again by the statues. Coram found something familiar about the statues. Had he seen work like them before? And then he recalled his adventure in Arioch's castle, and slowly the truth came. Coram resisted the truth. He did not want to know it. But now he was close to the nearest of the statues and could not avoid the evidence. These were not statues at all. These were the corpses of folk very much like the tall, fair folk of Tuath na Crimcruach, corpses frozen as they prepared to do battle against an enemy. Coram could see their expressions, their attitudes. He saw the look of resolute courage on every face. Men, women, quite young boys and girls. The javelins, axes, swords, bows, slings and knives still clutched in their hands. They had come to do battle with the Fói Mior, and the Fói Mior had answered their courage with this expression of contempt for their power and their nobility. Not even the hounds of Keranos had come against this sad army. Perhaps the Fói Mior themselves had refused to appear, sending only a coldness, a sudden, awful coldness which had worked instantly and turned warm flesh into ice. Coram turned away from the sight, the bow forgotten in his hands. The horse was nervous and was only too glad to bear him away around the banks of the frozen tarn where still dead reeds stood like stalagmites, like a travesty of the dead folk nearby. And Coram saw two who had been wading in the water. They too were frozen, appearing to be chopped off at the waist by the flat ice, their arms raised in attitudes of terror. A boy and a girl, both probably little older than 16 years. And the landscape was dead. The landscape was silent. The plodding of the horse's hooves sounded to Coram like the tolling of a death knell. He fell forward across his saddle pommel, refusing to look, unable even to weep, so horror-struck was he by the images he had seen. And then he heard a moan which at first he thought was his own. He lifted his head, drawing cold air into his lungs, and he heard the sound again. He turned. He forced himself to glance back at the frozen host, judging that to be the direction from where the moan had come. A black shape was clearly visible now among the white ones. A black cloak flapped like the broken wing of a raven. "Who are you," Coram cried, "that you weep for these?" The figure was kneeling. As Coram called out, it rose to its feet, but no face or even limbs could be seen emerging from the tattered cloak. "Who are you?" Coram turned his horse. "Take me too, Fói Mior vassal." The voice was weary and it was old. "I know you and I know your cause." "I think that you do not know me then," said Coram kindly. "Now say who you are, old woman." "I am Iarvain, mother of some of these, wife to one of these, and I deserve to die. If you be my enemy, slay me. If you be my friend, then slay me, friend, and prove thyself a good friend to Iarvain. I would go now where my lost ones go. I want no more of this world and its cruelties. I want no more visions and terrors and truths. I am Iarvain, and I prophesied all that you see, and that is why I fled when they would not listen to me. And when I came back I found that I had been right, and this is why I weep. But not for these. I weep for myself, and my betrayal of my folk. I am Iarvain the serious, but now I have none to see, for none to respect me, least of all myself. The Fói Mior came and they struck them down. The Fói Mior left in their clouds with their dogs, hunting more satisfactory game than my poor clan, who were so brave, who believed that the Fói Mior, no matter how depraved, how wicked, would respect them enough to offer them a fair fight. I warned them of what would befall them. I begged them to flee as I fled. They were reasonable. They told me I could go, but they wished to stay, that a folk must keep its pride, or perish in different ways, each one dying within themselves. I did not understand them. I understand them now. So slay me, sir. Or now the thin arms were raised imploringly, the black rags falling away from flesh that was blue with cold and with age. Now the head covering dropped, and the wrinkled face with its thin grey hair was revealed. And Coram saw the eyes and wondered if, in all his travels, he had ever seen such misery as that which he saw in the eyes of Eowyn the seeress. Slay me, sir. I cannot, said Coram. If I had more courage, I would do what you ask, but I have no courage of that sort, lady. He pointed westward with his bow, which was still strung. Go that way. Try to reach Caer Marlod, where your folk still resist the Foy-Muir. Tell them of this. Warn them of this, and thus you will redeem yourself in your own eyes. You are already redeemed in mine. Caer Marlod? You come from there? From Cremsmount in the coast? I am upon a quest. I seek a spear. The spear Brionac. Her voice now had a peculiar gasp in it. The tone was higher, and her eyes were now looking out beyond Coram, and she swayed a little. Brionac and the bull of Crinanas, silver hand, Crem Cruach shall come. Crem Cruach shall come. The voice had changed again to a soft chant. The lines seemed to leave her old face, and a certain beauty was there now. Crem Cruach shall come, and he shall be called. Called? And his name shall not be his name. Coram had been about to speak, but now he listened in fascination as the old seeress continued to chant. Coram Lor Erent, silver hand and scarlet robe, Coram is thy name, and you shall be slain by a brother. Coram had begun to believe in the old woman's powers, but now he found himself smiling. Well, slain I might be, old woman, but not by a brother. I have no brother. Ye have a great many brothers, Prince. I see them all. Proud champions all, and great heroes. Coram felt his heart began to beat faster, and there was a tightness in his stomach. He said hastily, No brothers, old woman, none. Well, why did he fear what she said? What did she know that he refused to know? You're afraid, she said. I can see that I speak the truth, but do not fear. You have only 3 things to fear. The first is the brother of which I spoke. The second is a harp, and the third is beauty. Fear those 3 things, Coram Lor Erent. Nothing else. Beauty? The other 2 are at least tangible, but why fear beauty? And the third is beauty, she said again. Fear those 3 things. I'll listen to this nonsense no more. You have my sympathy, old woman. Your ordeal has turned your mind. Go, as I said, to Caer Marlod, and there they will look after you. There you can atone for that which makes you guilty, though I say again, you should not feel guilt. Now I must continue my quest for the spear of Brionac. Brionac, Sir Champion, will be yours, but first you will make a bargain. A bargain? With whom? I know not. I take your advice. If I live, I will tell the folk of Caer Marlod of what I have seen here. But you must take my advice also, Coram Jalen Ursay. Do not dismiss my advice. I am Earvine the serious, and what I see is always true. It is only the consequences of my own actions that I cannot foresee. That is my fate. And it is my fate, I think, said Coram as he rode away from her, to flee from truth. At least, he added, I think I prefer small truths to larger ones. Farewell, old woman. Surrounded by her frozen sons, her ragged cloak fluttering about her old, thin body, her voice high and faint, she called once more to him. Fear only those three things, Coram of the Silver Hand, brother, harp, and beauty. Coram wished that the harp had not been mentioned. The other two things he could easily dismiss for a madwoman's ravings. But he had already heard the harp, and he already feared it.